So, that's over with now. I kind of wish I waited until now to do my Spoilercast on Crisis on Infinite Earths, the big CW crossover. I decided to split it up in two because I figured there would be so much more to talk about with the last two episodes. And I don't have a whole lot. I'm going to do my level best to make this interesting and talk just a little bit with you about it, but I don't have a whole lot. It ends kind of sort of the way you would expect, and it doesn't feel like really a story is being told so much as this is the place we've decided we are at the end, and these are the shows that we want to advertise and hype, and that's kind of what the point of this whole thing was in the first place, it looks like, and the end. That's all you get. Read a book, and it's like, we waited a whole month for this. Yay. It should have all aired together, I think, just because the last couple episodes, I think, compared to the rest, even as much as I disliked a lot of things about the second episode, it feels pretty lame to me. It's pretty padded. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and there's a whole lot of stuff about the first three episodes too, the first, more than half of this, that also is kind of, ridiculous and doesn't really feel very coherent. But this is not just lack of coherency. This is just something, and we win. And Crisis, the original book, was very complicated and very convoluted and very, very technobabbly. This kind of skips a lot of the technobabble and just says, like I said, something, and Arrow, or Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, dies a second time as the Spectre and remakes the multiverse into a universe. But wait, it's also a multiverse, and don't think too much about it. Don't think too much about any of this. And so it's really difficult not to just kind of take it at its premise of, oh, okay, this wasn't really a story, so don't think too much about it. But I'm gonna do a little bit of thinking. I'm gonna think just a little bit, probably more than anybody that wrote on this did. And it's kind of sad because Marv Wolfman's name is in the writing credits for the the penultimate episode, the fourth episode. And it's kind of neat that they got him back to work on this. I would be very surprised if he ultimately was happy with the way his work was adapted as it is. I know he's been really unhappy with some other adaptations of things he's written, especially Teen Titans: The Judas Contract, and I would love to know just how much input he actually really had on this, or if they just took enough of his initial concepts and maybe had him, sitting at a pitch meeting, just enough that they could put his name on this. I can't remember if it was just a story credit, or I thought it said screenplay by him and somebody else. So I don't know how much he really worked on this, and there's some pieces of dialogue here and there in that episode that strike me as kind of Wolfman-esque, so maybe he actually did put pen to paper some here, but that's a very imaginative dude. I cannot imagine that it was his idea at all, or that he would have been happy with the padding of that episode, where we pretty much just go back and hit a bunch of old beats from old episodes, and even see a lot of footage from previous episodes. I mean, it's the dictionary definition of padding. Somebody in the Secret Society, our Facebook group, suggested that it kind of ripped off Endgame some, where we're just kind of going back and playing our greatest hits and seeing events that we've seen before, and I could totally see these shows getting to that even without Endgame. But yeah, it felt like that, but without even as clever of a conceit, and we didn't play around in, like even if you like that kind of thing, where we, go back in time and mess around in the timeline, and kind of the end of Back to the Future 2, and I don't mind that kind of thing. I know a lot of people are really sick of it and don't like it. I think it can be really cool and really fun, but I also think it's really easy to just rest on your laurels and it turn into just kind of a gimmick, and we didn't even do anything cool with that. We just said, okay, were representing these events inside the Speed Force, and we go back to some major events, and sometimes even events that aren't all that major, so like at least 2 of them, if not 3, I forget now. This is all seeping out of my brain as I'm talking about it. It's so unmemorable and so unsatisfying to me. But we go back to the death of Black Canary for some reason, I guess just because she is one of the big major players in this, and at the end it kind of all feels like wrapped around Sarah, and of course I still love Katie lots. I feel like she is kind of these days phoning in her performance some because she I feel like a lot of the really good actors in these shows eventually get to this place where it's like, oh, this material isn't as sophisticated as it used to be, and now it's kind of just a hammy cartoon, and what am I supposed to do with this, and now I'm just cashing a paycheck. And that's very much what Stephen Amell has been doing for most of his show. First couple seasons, he's taking it very seriously. He keeps calling himself in social media and stuff a fan of his show. I haven't heard him say that in a long time. Maybe he still does, but I get the sense that he and Katie Lots both have kind of the same attitude about it now, and she's probably happy to be working and glad to be getting a steady paycheck and getting to kind of be the star of a TV show, but it's not a good TV show, and you can just tell in her performance that she feels that way, and so she's playing a completely different character now, and some of that is her feeling like she doesn't really necessarily want to be there anymore, and some of that is just what's on the page for her. This is a different character now, and so anyway, we're in the Speed Force in that penultimate episode, and we have to go round up all of the Paragons again. We just had them, and then Barry goes in the Speed Force, and somehow they wind up there, and I don't really know what's going on, and to be frank, I don't care at this point. When we get to the end of it, so he manages to round everybody up after he winds up talking to Ezra Miller's Flash about their costumes for 5 minutes. And I don't know what's going on there, except just more fan service, and it feels very much like that's supposed to be just one more big giant surprise that nobody saw coming. I saw it coming because these shows, or because Crisis had way too many leaks initially and way too much press, and I couldn't get away from them. I kept finding out about stuff even if I didn't want to, and so I knew that there was supposed to be some kind of connection with the DCEU, and we hadn't gotten there yet. So either that was a false report, or there was still something else waiting for us around the corner, and there was no reason to assume that all the cameos were definitely over just because we destroyed the multiverse, because this whole thing has been sold so hard on fan service. I figured somehow or rather we were going to insert more fan service, and maybe not until the very end when we brought back the universe or the multiverse or however we did it. Turns out we had our cake and eat it too, and did both of those things somehow. And so, you know, I figured it would be right at the end. We do, at the very, very end, when Oliver has his final voiceover of all time, unless he somehow gets another one in his show. I don't really know how he shows back up in his show at the end, because I know he's supposed to be there for the last episode, but I don't know how that's going to end up working, because he's dead now twice, and like really dead, like absolutely dead. Like he'll never. It's impossible he ever comes back dead. Supposedly, allegedly, and a lot of this whole thing is just about that, where it's like, no, really, he's not coming. Okay, we get it. His show's been getting canceled, like or ending. Like, yeah, okay, fine, we get it. He's not coming back. I didn't realize that was going to be the big dramatic crux for the last 2 episodes. Whether or not a character that you have already killed off is going to stay killed off. But anyway, so at the very end, we do get cameos of several universes, mostly just already shot footage that wasn't made for this. It's really weird that we bookended it with Titans. We got, if memory serves, I thought there was a Flash to Titans in the first episode, and then we do that again here. I read that apparently the producers and the cast of that show didn't want to be involved in this at all. They didn't want their show to be at all connected with the CW shows, which strikes me as a little snooty, because the way it read to me was that they thought that their show was too sophisticated for this material, and I've seen that pilot, and that makes me laugh. Maybe it gets better, maybe it gets smarter, but I couldn't watch that show past the pilot, so I think that's hilarious. That's basically Gotham and the CW shows have a baby. That's the pilot of Titans, and so it's really funny to me if that was the reasoning. But it is, at the same time, kind of crappy what the CW shows did to them, because they said, oh, okay, so you're not going to come in and shoot cameos for this, so against your wishes, we're going to just use footage from your show already. That's not cool. That's kind of wrong. I would have just left it well enough alone. But I don't know whose call that was ultimately, and if there wasn't maybe a parent company thing here, because it just watches like a big advertisement for whatever shows are coming or whatever shows are on already. Right at the end, it's like, here's Doom Patrol and here's Swamp Thing, even though it's canceled already, but you can go watch that on DC Universe. Like, everything you see at the end is either a recent show or a show that's on right now, or trying to make a big deal out of something coming out on the horizon. That's the only possible explanation for why footage from the Green Lantern movie is there. I'm pretty sure that's what that is, because we know that there's a Green Lantern show that's supposed to be coming out on HBO Max, but there's not any footage for that yet. And the only thing that's not connected to shows that are already airing or that they want you to go look at is the Brandon Routh Superman thing, because they felt the need to throw that in right at the end so they could have a big Christopher Reeve nod and use the obvious John Williams music and that kind of thing. So I'm sure some fans were giddy about that, getting to see Brandon Routh, older Brandon Routh, with the admittedly the only, like, really super cool thing from top to bottom they did in this. They didn't do enough with it, but the Kingdom Come Superman was really cool. And of course, naturally, we have to get rid of him just as we're getting to know and love him. And that really sucks. And when I say Kingdom Come Superman, I mean again, Christopher Reeve / Brandon Routh Superman from Superman Returns becoming the Kingdom Come Superman. All of that was really super cool, and then naturally, of course, we have to get rid of it, and then it's like the show knew that was going to be a fan favorite thing, and did a quick nod to it once again right at the end, and made sure that you knew he was still alive. I'm jumping all over the place. Let me also mention that I have no idea what other universes are still around and who else might still be alive or is dead now. Remember last review when I talked about Smallville Clark and how he just basically turns his nose up in the multiverse and is like, save yourself, I don't care, and or like, I don't believe you, or whatever, and he just goes into his farmhouse, and then the whole universe is gone, minutes later. Well, he deserves what probably happened to him, honestly, in my opinion. I don't know if the Smallville universe still exists. I don't know if the 66 universe still exists. Like, it's weird. It's really weird. I guess I'll just go ahead and talk about this now, and then I'll get back to the Ezra Miller thing in a minute. It's really weird to me, right, that you would recreate the multiverse, because the whole point of Crisis in the first place, again, was to simplify the DC multiverse. It was the issue was it was too complicated. People couldn't keep up with stuff, and it was impossible for writers to keep everything straight and to keep the continuity consistent. So they simplified everything and made it one universe. And I said last review that it's kind of pointless to do Crisis if that's not what you're going to do at the end. And that's sort of kind of what we end up doing. So I appreciate that at least now all the CW shows are under one roof, or in one universe. That's nice, and it did feel a little bit like the big epilogue issue at the end of Crisis in that last episode, where Supergirl goes back to what she thinks is just her universe, and then it turns out that she's in the same place with Flash and Black Lightning and Batwoman and everybody. And I do kind of like that scene scene with the guy that asked for their autograph and is like, oh yeah, you guys have been doing this together forever. And I wanted that to be what Flashpoint was about. And so finally, years later, we're doing that, and that's what I wanted, so yay, I guess. But it's just awkward because somehow Oliver, like, blending those universes into one, it also, like Oliver, Spectre, Oliver, that ends up also spawning a new multiverse. And again, don't ask questions. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. It's like, I don't know what the point was of merging the universes we merged, except these shows are all on the CW, and that's what we've decided to do now. And I don't even really know what the point of that is now, except that, well, if we're going to do Crisis, there needs to be some kind of consequences or the fans are going to cry foul. I mean, that's never stopped them before. I don't know why maybe they care about that at this point, but and again, like, I don't mean to I don't mean to criticize them for giving me sort of exactly what I wanted. Like, okay, yay, I'm glad you merged these shows finally, like you should have with Flashpoint in Supergirl's second season, where it would have made the most sense, but it's just really awkward story-wise, where it's like, I don't understand why the merging happens at all if there's also a multiverse, and they don't lead with it. So that's the epilogue. Like, you find out there is still a multiverse at the epilogue, so it's like, we have Earth Prime now, and all of our characters seem to be oblivious to the fact that there is still a multiverse, which makes me hope that we don't keep doing a whole bunch of multiversal stories and we kind of just keep it on one Earth now and keep it a little bit simpler, and then it feels like the stakes are higher and things, like our characters matter more and more things count. So, I mean, I guess that would be good. And in their defense, I don't, like I said last time, know how you rope in every universe where those things are, like other continuities, other properties are never going to call back to this and talk about the fact that they're in the same world. So this, like I said last time, like, this is kind of a weird premise in the first place, because you know that can't fully happen, and I guess this is the only way to compromise and sort of do it, but I wish we'd led with it, because I was like, oh, okay, we're all in one universe, and then at the end, it turns out that, oh no, all these other universes are still out there, and I guess our characters just don't know about them. What makes it weirder is that we, again, have our cake and eat it too with this, where we blended the universes of the CW shows, and Black Lightning, I think, is going to be weirdly compromised by this, because that is a more grounded street-level show, and I wonder if it will just kind of pretend like these other shows don't exist, except for when they occasionally want to do a crossover, because that show, in this world, doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's kind of the big issue with it, right? Where we keep saying contradicting things throughout this episode now that we've put this universe together, Earth Prime, that can't all possibly, we have all these things that can't possibly all go together. So you have the President of the United States, who is weirdly played by, like, I thought they would maybe get Linda Carter back, and because a lot of people wanted to see some kind of a Wonder Woman reference to the 1977 show, and that, I read, for whatever reason, wasn't going to happen, and I don't know if she was just not interested, or if she's, like, done with these shows, and he's never coming back, or what, but we resorted to the actress who played Henry Small's wife in Smallville. I couldn't believe she was the president. Of all people, that's the president. Okay, and I guess she's fine, whatever, and she has this, she doesn't seem especially presidential to me. Linda Carter absolutely did. Anyway, so she's got this speech about how Oliver is dead now, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because I don't totally understand that whole thing. I'm already 20 minutes in. I didn't think I would have this much to say, but I guess I have things to say. She's like, well, Oliver was the first superhero, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense for two major reasons. A, you have a middle-aged superhero now in Black Lightning. I guess maybe just nobody knew about him, just all that time, except I've seen the first couple episodes of that show, and I'm pretty sure he was a public figure. I think people knew about Black Lightning, if memory serves. I haven't seen that in a while, and I haven't gone back to that show. I should. But anyway, so there's that. There's the fact that he was in retirement for like 10 years or more, and she's like, Oliver was the first. Okay, well, the math doesn't pan out there. It's like the math with the train station incident in, or the train incident in Split versus Glass. Like, there's like a bunch of years missing. It doesn't make any sense. And then you've also got the fact that Superman has had his entire history then apparently since Oliver became the Green Arrow, and he was also inspired by the Green Arrow, who's a vigilante who goes around and murders people, and these shows can never decide if he counts as a hero or not. Even at the very end when he dies, when he's going around, it's like the real heroes keep going. And I guess that means that he wasn't a real hero, even though we keep talking about how great he is and how he was kind of the best of us, and like all the way to the end. At least we're consistent with our inconsistency. All the way until the very end, these shows cannot decide how heroic Oliver Queen was, or if he was an anti-hero, or if, like, is he a role model? Should he not be thought of as a role model? We can't decide. It's like the same scripts. It's crazy. So anyway, there's no way that Oliver Queen in this universe, as the universes have been put back together, could possibly have been the first superhero. It also, in my mind, doesn't seem to be able to decide whether what we're dealing with is a, like, paved-over timeline, or if it's a universe put back together by all the different universes and all the histories really did happen, because of the fact that we had to go back to the beginning of time in order to do it. So, it's like 10,000 years ago or whatever, we have this big fight with the Anti-Monitor and Oliver, which is way too easy, and he wins because that's what the series needs to happen. And then he remakes the universe and puts, and I guess Oliver is beholden to the executives at the CW, because he makes sure and puts all their universes together finally in one place. And then we fast forward to now, and I don't know if another 10,000 years have passed and, like, all the histories more or less happened the same way, or if, again, it's not really time moving, but just, like, rearranging the pieces of a larger puzzle into a smaller, more condensed one, like we did with Crisis, with the original Crisis. I'm really lost about that. So Oliver is dead. He, like, recreates the universe, and he lived in it, but he is also dead. So I guess it couldn't have been a paved-over timeline, but it kind of watches like it was. I'm lost about that. I don't like, and I just watched it. I haven't really had time to think about this, so maybe it would make more sense on a second viewing. But not that I really want to watch this again. Like I'm disappointed. I mean, it was not great. But yeah, I don't totally get what's going on with that, and I'm not sure these writers and producers do either. Let me go back for a minute to the Ezra Miller thing now. Again, that seems to be just there because it's the last thing you're supposed to expect right then. And I was looking for it, like I said. And so when it came up, it didn't blow my mind like it did a lot of other people's, except for the fact that I didn't know what was going on and why. I don't know why Ezra Miller's Flash is there. Barry, like, what am I missing? Our Barry is like, Grant Gustin Barry is like, this shouldn't be possible now. And Ezra Miller's like, what do you mean now? And he doesn't have, he doesn't take the opportunity to explain the multiverse or anything. And I was like, yeah, why is he there? Like, there's no context. Not just, well, all the multiverse has been destroyed at this point, so how is this even possible? But also, like, what was he in the middle of doing when he got roped into this? And why didn't it happen to anybody else? To any other Flashes or anyone else except for the Paragons? Like, I don't know why he's there. It's just for the sake of fan service. It's really strange. And we didn't take the opportunity to do anything cool with it. They just stare at each other, and Barry's like, oh no, don't tell me, your name is also Barry too. And like, well, there's precedent for this now, we shouldn't be that surprised by it. Like, his dad looks exactly like Jay Garrick from another universe, but was not Jay Garrick, and he knows that there is a Clark Kent from Supergirl's Earth, and Earth 38, and there's also a Clark Kent that looks just like the Atom. Like, he knows this. He shouldn't be that surprised by the fact that it's Barry Allen he's looking at. He should be more surprised, and he is certainly, by the fact that there just is somebody else there at all. Like, anybody that's not one of the Paragons. And so, I don't know, we just didn't take any cool opportunities with that. Like, it could have been sort of neat, and it's a big deal to people because they roped in the DCEU and because they were able to get Ezra Miller to even come in and do it. Apparently, and I don't know the story past this, but apparently that was like an 11th hour thing, and they shot that after everything. So I don't know what it took to get him to do it, and I don't know if they just didn't even think to do it until after they'd already shot everything. I don't know what they were thinking with that, but I don't know that it's really that big of a deal. Like, I guess it was neat that they got him, but like they've already connected to all these other DC things, and it's never gonna matter that these things are all in the same multiverse, especially now. And again, hilariously, we don't go back to it at the end, so obviously it has to still be there. Well, this is interesting. I was going to say it has to still be there because they're making more movies, but maybe this is the explanation. It won't be. It won't be in the movies. Mark my words, there's no way that this becomes like a canonical discussed thing in any of the DC movies, but Warner's keeps talking about how they're just going to make movies now, and the DCEU is kind of dead, and they're not really worried about building to a big event or having the continuities connect, and like if it organically ends up making sense to start connecting things again, they will do that, but they're trying to distance themselves from what Zack Snyder was doing because that was not successful, of course, and so I think it would be really funny if he got stuck somehow in the Speed Force after his universe got destroyed. He's just in the Speed Force now, and like he's out there somewhere, and he stays there when the multiverse gets redesigned, and the DCEU is gone now, but there is something else that's sort of kind of like it, that's a little bit better, and it's also retooled, and so we keep the things, just like with all the CW shows being merged in one universe, because that's a business decision before it's anything. We do the same thing with the DCEU, where it's like, well, we're going to hang on to Wonder Woman because she's popular, and we're going to hang on to Aquaman, but we're getting rid of that Batman and that Superman, and Suicide Squad is maybe even its own universe now, like it's disconnected from that, and it's in this other place. That would be really funny, and if this was the cause of all of that. It won't be, but I want that. I kind of want that to be the explanation, because it's an easy explanation. Now that we have connected this multiverse with that one, with the DCEU, there is now precedent if they really wanted to do that. That won't happen, but that would be kind of amazing. Anyway, I digress. This is boring. It's just not great. It's we're rushing to we're not even rushing because we're padding out for so much, but like we're headed toward a finish line. We know where we want all our pieces to be at the end of that, and they're just pieces. They're not really people. We don't have characters making interesting decisions that ultimately lead us here. The whole thing is just a big tribute to the show and the character that started this all, even though we still, at the very end, cannot decide exactly who he is and whether or not you're supposed to be inspired by him. And we're just setting up, new status quo stuff. Like, this doesn't really watch like the standalone miniseries for anybody that wants to watch it that it was advertised as. It's kind of just it's a big tribute to the whole of the CW multiverse, but of shows, but it's also a advertisement for things we're doing later. We're bringing in the new Atom, and like, they're probably already thinking maybe we're gonna get that Superman and Lois show, and that's probably why they get as much screen time as they do, not that they're here a whole lot. That has now been, I think, greenlit for a pilot, I think I read this last week. That is supposed to be going ahead, and I like Tyler Hoechlin. I'd like to see him play Superman some more, but I don't like their Lois that much, and I'm a little bit unsure about her name being in the title, just because that means she's going to be like the other main protagonist. It's going to be like a Lois and Clark thing, and I don't think they're great together. And hopefully, starting a show from the ground up, maybe that will get better, where they're not just side players, and maybe we can actually develop that a little bit. But I don't have a lot of stock in any of the CW stuff anymore. It remains really weird now that we've combined all the universes, and I know I talked about this last time, but now that we have actually done that, it's even weirder that Batwoman wasn't already her own universe. It did not matter that at all that she was in Oliver's universe, and there should not have been a Batman there because Oliver was basically Batman. Like, that should have been a world that didn't have Batman and Superman in it. And now that we've merged them all, Batman and Superman are in that world. That's what we should have done, and that's not what we did. And it's ridiculous. Like, besides the Supergirl crossover, which I've not seen, in Batwoman, there is really no discussion of the rest of that universe. It could have very easily been its own. I also don't know where last year's big event falls in the timeline of that show, because she's already established, but then her show establishes her and does the origin for her, and I don't know where that falls. Like, she's talking about the Elseworlds event from last year as if it happened last year. She says that. And I don't think there's any big time jump in her show, but I've only watched the first few episodes, so I don't know that, but I would be very surprised if there was. So, yeah, we didn't have our ducks in a row on that, and I don't know why you would backdoor pilot a thing like that. Like, they were a lot smarter about that. Back in the day when it seemed like somebody really gave a crap with storytelling in these shows. Like, I'm sorry for being so blunt, but we're not telling stories, at least in Crisis. It's really not a story we're telling. It's just kids playing with action figures and not being inspired by anything interesting. We just a bunch of uncreative kids playing with action figures. That's how I would, at the end of the day, describe this. Obviously, I enjoyed some of the cameos and things from the first 3 episodes, and I liked 3 quite a bit compared to the rest of it, but man, these last 2 episodes, like I said, they're just kind of lame. I think we are still pretty consistent about each episode feeling more or less of the quality of the show that it would usually fall in. Like, that 4th episode is not as good as Arrow has been this year, but it's better than that 5th episode, which does watch like a Legends episode. That whole Bebo thing was just kind of a waste of time, and it's supposed to be funny and charming, but I'm kind of chomping at the bit to see the other shoe drop, because I know they can't be done. There's going to be some kind of a big fight with the Anti-Monitor. That's going to happen. He's going to come back. And again, like I said earlier, I don't mean to be a broken record, but I remain confused about the timeline thing. Either he's been waiting around for 10,000 years, and for whatever reason, even though the Paragons aren't there yet, he can't try to destroy anything and replace it with the antimatter reality until the Paragons show up, or there is no paving over time component. I'm so confused about that, and it just doesn't really make any sense. But anyway, I guess that's gonna do it for me. At the end of the day, I'm not feeling it, and I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised. But I don't know. It's impressive to me that so many of the cameos and guest stars were really cool, interesting ideas, and we made a lot of them as uncool as humanly possible, as uninspired as you could possibly get, and kind of cynical, some of them, especially Evil Batman, which still just sort of hurts my feelings. We get Kevin Conroy on screen, and he's playing the least redeemable Batman of all time, except for maybe Frank Miller's All-Star, but at least that guy had a little bit of wit and stuff. He's horrifying, but it was kind of in some ways a fun train wreck to look at. I mean, it's not good, don't get me wrong, but this was just hard to look at. And anyway, I don't know. It's rough. Oh, you know what? I also didn't talk about the whole Justice League thing. It's weird that we don't already have a Justice League before this. Like, finally, it's like, in this day and age, you cannot have a big giant event without it being an origin for something. Where you have to set up a thing and make it feel like, even if you're like 8 years into your shared universe, it's still gotta feel like a big origin thing. It's still gotta feel like everything's been leading up to this thing that you've been just chomping at the bit to see the whole time, instead of just plunging ahead and getting past everything you know already and like charting new territory and breaking new ground. That's not that's just not what we do anymore. You know, you make like 2 Star Trek movies, starting with 09, with the J.J. Abrams, his first movie, and you get 2 out of 3 movies, and at the end of that, we're finally going on the 5-year mission. You know, you've got, like, at the end of, I think nearly every Daniel Craig Bond movie, it's been like, oh, now he's James Bond. And like he's an older Bond, and he's like coming out of retirement, but also finally he's James Bond. And we're still doing that with this. Didn't we set up the Hall of Justice in the last crossover? I thought I remembered that, and then we did a double beat, and we did it again. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but I thought we did that already. And it's like this time, no, but this time we're sitting around the table. We're still not going to call it the Justice League. We can't have that name drop. We can't do that. And then we've got a, I don't know, like at the end of your most epic possible crossover thing, which doesn't feel nearly as epic as the end of it. Like, it felt like we ran out of money by that 4th episode. But and some of that CG at the end is really dodgy, particularly with the giant Anti-Monitor. Like, anybody else think they were just watching a Power Rangers episode by the end of this? Like, I realized the Anti-Monitor in the comics is this big, huge, scary monster guy. But lamely, we don't start that way, and he's got to just talk like the Anti-Monitor with some kind of filter on his voice. And then at the very end, the big, giant, exciting climax is, oh, he's big now, and we're gonna find him huge. And I was like, you guys need a Megazord, seriously. So, at the end of your big, huge, crazy, epic crossover that you can't possibly trump in scale, at least, ever. I don't mean you can't make a better crossover than this, because you absolutely could have, and I wish they had. But at least in scale, you're never gonna top this. And the big thing you're setting up at the end is Super Friends. Okay, they got Gleek or whatever. Was it the pet of the Wonder Twins, or the pet of that kid that the Wonder Twins later replaced? I can't remember anymore. I haven't seen Super Friends in forever. But like, we get the Super Friends theme song, and like, that's cool, I guess. But I don't know. It's so totally all over the place. Like, it's hilarious that totally what we're left is Super Friends. And what we're left with, is Super Friends. And like I said, we're gonna have the Hall of Justice, and we're gonna make a big deal out of, we'll come together now at this building if anything like this ever happens again. Never mind the fact that we've come together for like 4 or 5 of these crossover things now, and only just now is someone going, yeah, we should have a team. Except I think somebody said that last year, but like, we didn't do anything with it. I bet next time we do the same thing. Like, when we have a big crossover again, I don't know what they're gonna do to top this scale-wise. We're gonna have a big crossover again, right? And at the very end, we're all gonna show up at this building like we forgot it was there. We're like, oh, that's right, we're supposed to come to this building. We all come together, and we still haven't like put anything in this warehouse. It's just still this big empty building, and they all just show up so that somebody can say, you know what, we should have a name. And then it's like 4 more crossovers down the road before they actually finally are the Justice League. It's like they just come up with a name, and then they keep coming up with other reasons to stall. It's ridiculous. I said years ago that instead of Legends, they should have just done a Justice League show. And I think at this point, a lot of these shows should all be condensed into just one big show. The budgets would be better. Like, you wouldn't have to pad out so much for material. You could do 20, 22 episode seasons still and just have, make it more like Justice League Unlimited, where you just focus on different characters in different places or in different episodes, or you make it like Young Justice, right? Where you have a whole lot of different threads unraveling and stuff, and you've got all this real estate, time-wise, to play with all these characters in a more cohesive and tight kind of way. So, maybe you have like a couple of tentpole shows, like maybe Batwoman. I mean, I wish that show was, a little bit more lively and a little more interesting, but you have Batwoman, and she's a loner, so like maybe it makes sense for her to have her own show. Maybe she only needs like 10 episodes a season, like Legends has. Because Legends is doing it backwards. When you have a big giant ensemble cast show, you think that would be the show that maybe needed more room to breathe. But no, your show with this huge cast where there's no main protagonist, that's the one that's only got 10 episodes, which is merciful because it's not good and it's just a Saturday morning cartoon. But, maybe you have that, maybe you have Supergirl, maybe those are like your tentpole shows, and maybe you have Black Lightning because he kind of shouldn't even be connected to all of this really, just because of his initial premise. And then, I don't mind that he's connected now. That could potentially be interesting, but I kind of don't think that his show is going to acknowledge it a lot. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see, if you're watching that show, and I might eventually catch up on that. But I don't know. Like, that's what I would do. Just, like you don't need as many shows as they have now, because I don't, like, the ratings are obviously good enough to keep them all on, but maybe your ratings would be a little bit better for your, like, one big ensemble cast show, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you'd make more money that way. I guess I don't know, but it's a notion. It's an idea. Anyway, this was really scatterbrained. I just shot this immediately after watching this, didn't really have my thoughts together a lot, because I didn't think I was going to have a whole lot to say about this, but it's, I don't know, it's rough. And it's kind of unfortunate that I'm ending this saying that a just 5 episode, big epic event thing could have been done in 3. That's kind of sad. Anyway, well, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. And once again, leave your comments. Let me know what you thought of this. And let me know if you liked it more than I did. And in the meantime, I will see you again with more videos here on Geekvolution in the coming not too distant future. Bye, folks.